take your seats. Thank you. Are we doing this thing? Staying there? Are we? December. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to the EMW Drink Salon on Human Ethics. Our theme this month is food. And I made Christine for this talk because we've been like talking for months now that we're both trying to dress up like Steve Jobs. I think we should be spoofing talks to some degree. But yeah, thanks for coming. And we'll do a very quick intro. I know everyone's been kind of waiting, but and we'll turn it over to your curator, Catherine. But just a quick intro on what we do here at Drink Salon. It is to spark challenging discussions on the role of technology in our everyday lives. And these are some of the things that we've explored previously. And we also like to expand like the idea of who gets to participate in these conversations as well. And we strongly believe that it's a conversation that everyone can take part in. Yeah. And we come from a wide background, I guess. Steve also does comedy. She'll actually be dressing for a comedy show. And like, she's like super old. But yeah, it's all on a volunteer basis. It's amazing that we all just kind of came together, just being passionate about tech, being more inclusive, being less of this kind of like gated elitist community, some might say. So yeah, just really lucky to be able to work with so many awesome people. And I think that's pretty much it. I think the one last thing I wanted to mention is that we are trying to, and this is ambitious, but I think we'll make it happen. We are trying to launch like an online publication element of it. We'll just kind of like start entering it into like the newsletter, the email blast that we send, so that you have the content right there. But the idea is to just expand on exploring the notion of technology and how it impacts our lives and humanity. And really excited for that. Christine and I are going to interview Owen's mom, who actually teaches the history of technology at MIT. So she explores this technology in like a really interesting way, looking at it from like a feminist perspective, and also looking at the notion of technological determinism, where it's the idea is, and I will not rant further, although I think this is fascinating. But the notion is, does technology create history? Because I think there's a sense of inevitability with tech, and like singularity being the example. And I think some of those kind of preconceived notions are somewhat dangerous because it means that we're not, as a society, really, mindfully, I guess, working towards building either policies or just generally a system where people are benefiting equally from society. So, without going any further, Steve, do you have any last words to add?
I hope you have a good time tonight, meeting people and having great conversations. It is important for us that we do create a safer space, and so please keep that in mind.
And I think that's it. We'll just hand things off to Catherine, who did a great job curating. And yeah, thanks so much for coming and kind of checking out what this is all about.
So I'm Catherine, and I'm going to keep it super brief. I know you all are not here to see me. But first, I want to give a special shout out to Olio Culinary Collective. That was whose food you're eating tonight. And they're actually a group of chefs that are all double as community organizers. And they have several different projects. So they do catering, as you saw tonight. But they also partner with local nonprofits to do pop-ups and something called the Liberation Kitchen. And they also do sort of test demos and pop-ups at a shared kitchen in JP. So if you'd like to learn more about them, they have a Facebook page, Olio Culinary Collective, and their next test kitchen pop-up is May 21st if you're interested. So I hope you all enjoy the food, and we're really grateful that they partnered with us tonight. So, a little bit about me, very briefly. So my name is Catherine. I'm one of the volunteers at the EMW Drink Salon. By day, I work at a sustainability consulting firm, so I think about climate change and renewable energy issues all day long, 7 days a week. But before that, I curated the Environmental Film Festival at Yale for 2 years. And something that I really saw was how food was such a really important topic for people. Every year we had a movie that was selected about food. It was always sold out to a packed audience. People had a lot of really important questions, sort of interrogations about what they were eating and why they were eating. So this topic, when it came up on our Drink Salon queue, was very interesting to me. And I'd also like to flag that if there's a topic that you want to hear about, we have a idea wall over there. So during the break, feel free to queue up topics and put a star by it if you particularly would like to curate it, because we'd love to have you. Okay, and it's just some other few last housekeeping notes before I talk a little bit more about tonight. We're on Twitter, and our hashtag is EMW Drink Salon if you want to tweet tonight. And we're also streaming live for lots of folks who are from out of town who are interested in what's going on but can't be here with us. All right, so food. It's something we all love. Everyone, I think, ate some food when they came in here tonight. But as we sort of have had more access to information and technology has brought more information about our food to us, this meal has become a lot less simple. It's become a little bit of a maze in terms of thinking through what your food can be, and what types of decisions you might want to make about the type of food that you eat. And that means that this salon really could have been about anything, quite frankly. But I wanted to focus it just a little bit on one aspect. Because what really helped me, and as I was speaking through films at the New Haven, at the Environmental Film Festival at Yale, and when I was doing work in New Haven, something that really helped me come to terms with my relationship with food was thinking about the local food system and its context. So in grad school, I did a side project that got a little bit out of control, and this is actually New Haven's food system. And I mapped all of the farms that were around New Haven and was trying to think about if New Haven, up until about 2011, was actually a food desert, which means that there actually wasn't good access to retail grocery stores. By the time I got to grad school, that had changed entirely. There's actually only one little pocket left in New Haven that was a food desert, because retailers moved in, farmers markets moved in. There was a variety of things which led to this transformation. But one thing that we were interested in was it possible to fix that tiny little food desert that was left in New Haven? So we were taking a look at the local food system by calling up farms and trying to understand what the supply system for New Haven actually looked like. And we found that there are a couple of farms that could potentially contribute to a solution there. But as I was thinking about the salon, I realized I didn't actually know all that much about Boston's local food system. But there are a lot of great organizations within our city that are doing a lot of work on local production and also thinking through what it means to be in Boston's food system, how resilient it is to change, and how adaptable it is. So we have 3 great speakers for you tonight, and I'm super excited about. And they're going to be giving 3 very different talks. We're going to start off with Austin Nyhouse from ICIC. And he'll be talking about a really great study that was done about the resilience of Boston's food system. And prior to working on this study, he got awards for his GIS wizardry, so I can't wait for him to kick off the night. Then we'll be switching gears and talking about Grove, who has a very unique startup that's bringing personal growing into people's homes to get another perspective. And then lastly, we have Jackson Renshaw from Fresh Food Generation, which is one of the tastiest food trucks around, but they're also using a food truck to address issues like food access. So I'm really excited about the rest of the night, and I'm going to pass the mic to Austin, who's going to get us started. So with that, welcome to Drink Salon.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having us, or having me. Today, Catherine asked me to talk a little bit about our study that we did with the city of Boston that looked at the resilience of its food system. And we were particularly looking at natural disasters. So this might be a little of a somber talk, which is appropriate as the lights dim. But at least we have some drinks with us, so hopefully that won't be weird. So just quickly a little bit about ICIC. So we're the Initiative for a Competitive Inner City. This is really fantastic. like the details here. But anyway, so we're a nonprofit economic research and strategy organization. Our work is national, but we're actually located in Roxbury and Dudley Square. And a lot of our work over our 20 years has been centered around inner city economic development and helping businesses grow in the inner city. And in sort of that lens, we've been working in food systems across the country and helping businesses grow within the food systems or food clusters. And most recently, we started this new project with the city of Boston that's looking at the resilience of its food system. And this is a new growing area for us, and we're actually just kicked off a new study looking at 5 other cities in the US and how resilient they are to both natural disasters and other type of shocks like economic shock like the last recession. So that's ICIC, and now I'll just jump right into the study we did with the city of Boston. So as I'm sure most of you know, there's just been a lot of attention in the last 5-10 years about climate resilience and how cities are going to be impacted by a natural disaster. A lot of cities are really focusing on planning for disasters like Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy type storm. But a lot of that work is really centered around transportation systems, critical networks, roads, water systems, energy, telecommunications. But what's often missing from a lot of this planning is a focus on food systems. And we really just don't know what will happen to any urban city's food system, be it Boston's or anyone else's in the country. And that was really the motivation behind this work. So the city of Boston approached us, and they were really interested in this question. It was maybe around it was in 2014 when we started this. Hurricane Sandy had just happened a few years prior. It hit New York. If you guys were around before that, there was a lot of concern that was going to hit Boston instead of New York. And New York had all sorts of issues around their food system. There are all these news reports saying that cities only have like 2 to 3 days worth of food at a time, and it's really critical to make sure that supply is resilient and able to withstand some type of disruption. So let me just start, and I apologize because we're sort of an academic institution, so I'm going to probably bore you with a lot of bullet points in Times New Roman font. But let me just start the scene with defining what resilience is and what we think about resilience in the food system at ICIC. So right here, we call a resilient food system one that's able to recover from a negative shock and return back to its normal state. So on this graph, it basically explains what we expect to happen to a food system if a shock, such as a natural disaster, were to hit. Basically, it's going to take some time to recover, and the really big components that we're really concerned about is how our food availability, meaning how do we get our food, and food access, meaning how does the population get food too. And it's sort of a unique lens. It's not emergency management, which is really focused around like getting MREs to people, and you're eating like peanuts and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 3 days. It's really focusing on getting the system right back to where it was. And it's also sort of a different lens than the sustainability local food movement as well, because it's really looking at the holistic picture of the food system and how we get our food and what vulnerabilities might exist in case of a natural disaster that might disrupt that system. So this is just how we look at the food system. There are really 3 major components: the growing agriculture side, processing, how you get your raw agricultural products to something that you want to eat, and how it's distributed to either your retail location, restaurant, or your table. Really, for us and for an urban food system, when you're thinking about resilience, it's these 2 pieces, the processing and distribution sections, that are really critical when you're thinking about a natural disaster. And that's really because we know food is grown outside of the city, and what's really critical is how it gets from a manufacturing facility, be it like a pasta making facility to a distribution warehouse to a grocery store. And so this is our really simplified, even though it looks super complex, version of the food distribution system. And it's really complex, and this doesn't really do it justice, but I'll just walk you through how a normal food distribution system works. Basically, your food's processed at a single manufacturing facility, oftentimes way far out. And I think a lot of the discussion today will be centered around where our food really comes from. But once it's processed, it goes to these large-scale distribution centers, and then distribution centers, from there, distribution centers closer to home, like for example in Boston, in the outlying suburbs, and then finally to a retail location. And this whole system is all run by the private sector, which means they're not privy to give away their trade secrets. So you don't really know much about it other than this sort of information, this sort of macro level picture. But basically, there's sort of vulnerabilities that might exist to a natural disaster throughout this chain. For example, a lot of processing is focused in one center of the country. What would happen if a natural disaster hit that center versus another? Distribution centers, they're often, at least we'll talk about this in a bit, in the case of Boston, they're often located in sort of vulnerable areas, like floodplains, low-lying areas. We looked at San Francisco's distribution system as well. Really prone, their warehouses are located in earthquake, earthquake zones. And then retail, there's also those sort of same sort of vulnerabilities. So we tried to take, we quickly realized that it's really complex. This system is really complex and we can't really figure it out, figure out the whole system. So we took a representative approach to sort of map out where our food comes from. And this is, we tried to simplify it as much as possible. We just tried to get a typical food basket that an average consumer might eat. And then we just tried to map out that food system and see what the vulnerabilities might be in Boston. So I'll just walk you through this. It's sort of a diverse group, but pretty commonly eaten food. We started off with bread, pretty shelf stable. And so a lot of people consume it. Fresh milk, relatively short shelf life. Lettuce is a leafy green that's consumed fresh. Chicken breast is an affordable protein that many people eat. Canned soup, just shelf-stable product. And infant formula, which is a specialized food product necessary for certain populations. So this is sort of a robust sample of food, and we wanted to see, first of all, where it came from and what sort of vulnerabilities might exist in natural disaster. So I'll just quickly walk through all of them. For the interest of time, I'll just go through them one by one. So white bread is sort of really interesting. If you look at a store, you see rows and aisles of all sorts of types of bread, but they're all really owned by 3 companies. And those 3 companies take up the majority of the market, except for private label bread, which coincidentally is also made by these 3 same companies. So all the bread that we're eating is basically made from the same people, which creates a vulnerability to natural disaster if one of those goes down. So say a hurricane were to hit a bread bakery, you could potentially see that the supply would be disrupted because of that. But luckily, at least in Boston's case, there aren't too many bread or bakeries in the area. So we looked, so across our analysis, we looked like where processing facilities existed within a 75-mile radius, which is basically what a Hurricane Sandy type situation would be. So milk's a completely different story. So of all the food items we looked at, it's the one that's most produced locally. That's because there's a really short shelf life. So you really got to get the milk from the cow to the consumer in just a few days. So because of that, a lot of our milk facilities are located really close to Boston, because that's where most of the population is. So if a Sandy type storm were to hit the city, you could potentially see a disruption in at least 12 milk processing plants. And even in the last storm, or 2 winters ago, when we had the terrible winter with record snow, we were talking to a couple folks from Hood, and they were saying it took them a whole month to get their supply chain up and running just because of the snowstorms. You see, like, that's a perfect example. Like, our food system is really vulnerable, especially if it's disrupted by sort of a localized disaster. So lettuce is sort of a faraway issue. Everything's made in California and Arizona, except for Grove. You guys are making lettuce, right? So they're chugging away at that 98%. But because of that, the real concern for Boston's lettuce supply is how food gets from California or Arizona to Boston. And we'll talk about this in just a minute. It's mostly by trucks. And what does that mean for resilience? So chicken's sort of the same story. Really, there are only 4 companies that make chicken, or at least half the chicken we eat. It's all concentrated in the South, with just a few in Boston. So it's that same sort of idea. There are just a few companies, so what happens if one closes for some reason, be it economic or natural disaster? What does that mean to our food supply? But also, how do we get it here? What does that mean for our distribution system with food traveling all these long distances? And then briefly, chicken noodle soup. No one really thought there was an issue with chicken noodle soup. Everyone seems we have an infinite supply of chicken noodle soup, for better or worse. So low vulnerability. And then finally, infant formula, which is really interesting. There's sort of like this sort of artificial market that creates a really interesting vulnerability for infant formula, which is something a lot of people need, a lot of families need, especially in a disaster. So there are only 3 infant formula companies: Mead Johnson, Nestle, and Abbott. They control 98% of the market. But within a state, depending on who owns your WIC contract, there's only really one supplier. So in Massachusetts, Mead Johnson's infant milk. That's pretty much the only WIC provider that there is in the state. And what does that mean if you can't get that supply into the city, and there's only one really supply chain getting there? That's a huge vulnerability in a disaster. So I guess the moral of that story is a lot of the food is coming in from far distances, which puts an incredible strain and incredible importance for Boston's food system on the transportation system. So 94% of Boston's food arrives by truck. Our distribution centers are sort of located in the north and south of us, and there are a couple of fresh produce distribution centers out in Chelsea and Everett, but by and large, it's to the north and south of us. So that means they're accessing one road. They're accessing I-93. If you know I-93, it's terrible. But especially in a storm, what's really concerning is the central artery right through downtown. It's a tunnel. It's also in a floodplain. So if a 7.5-foot Sandy storm surge were to hit Boston, that's presumably going to be flooded. And there aren't many other directions. Like you can't take Starro. We've all been here on September, and trucks can't go on Starro. So this transportation system is really vulnerable, and not just the highways, but also the feeder roads. So this was a picture taken from 2 winters ago, and no one could get anywhere. We heard stories from grocery stores. They can get trucks in and out of their facilities. It was creating huge supply chain disruptions. One down in Roxbury, where we're at, Tropical Foods, which is a great store, but they were saying their loading bays aren't a public access road, which was covered in snow the whole time. So and they had huge supply chain disruptions because of that. And that sort of brings, like, when you're thinking about a resilience of Boston's food system, and you're thinking about what would be most impactful, and it really brings up an interesting question: would it be better to build up this local food movement, which is great, and trying to build a robust local food system. But would it also be better if we decided to fix our infrastructure? There would be, not just for food, but there's a lot of great reasons to do that in general. We all know how terrible Boston roads are. And then sort of the flip side of the coin is, how do people access food? So we talked about a little bit about the supply chain distribution, but now sort of the other side, how do people access food? So this is a map I'll help orient you of the grocery stores in Boston, which are the black dots. And sort of this color thematic map just shows how far you are from a grocery store. Red, really close, blue, greater than a mile, which is sort of the standard definition of food desert. And as you see, Boston's doing great in this regard. There's a lot of food options. I think there are only 2 census tracts in the city that are classified as a food desert, that one in West Roxbury and over up in East Boston. And a lot of this credit has to go to Mayor Menino, who's one of his major priorities was putting a grocery store in every neighborhood. And he pretty much succeeded. I think it's 93% of the city is within a mile of a grocery store, which is great, both in normal times and sort of a disaster when you can think about these grocery stores potentially closing. And I would say of these, I think there are 40 in the city, potentially 9 are located in a floodplain if a hurricane were to hit. A lot of them are in Dorchester, sort of the South End area as well. But Boston has a lot going for it, just for the sheer number of grocery stores. But what's sort of really concerning and sort of what ICIC is really interested in is about what does that mean to vulnerable populations, especially in the inner city. So this is another map, grocery stores, corner stores, but overlaid with median household income. And sort of as you see sort of Boston's inner city neighborhoods, Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester, sort of low median income, 28,000 versus the city, which is at 52,000, and like highest income, median household income in the back bay, 86,000. So what does that mean in a disaster? Like presumably a lot of these residents are going to have a hard time bouncing back. They're either going to lose their jobs and they're going to have less disposable income, or they have to rebuild, and you're losing out income that could go to food. And that puts a big strain on residents, but also sort of the emergency food network that we have, the food bank and the food pantries. So we've talked with them a lot for this project, and they're great and they're super innovative. And they just built a new facility in maybe the last 5 years that was supposed to feed a growing food insecure population for the next like 15, 20 years. It took them 5 years to get to capacity, and now they can't meet demand. So they already can't meet demand, and then presumably in a disaster, they're going to be even more strapped, and that's going to have huge repercussions for our food system, and especially the emergency food system. So just quickly, just to wrap up, this is just a couple of our additional findings. We don't really have nice graphics. This is the boring academic stuff with the bullets and Times New Roman font. But basically, our grocery stores, some of our grocery stores are at risk. 9 out of 40 could flood in a storm. Our food wholesalers are especially at risk. So 45% of the food wholesalers, both in Boston, Chelsea, and Everett, again, that's the sort of produce wholesalers, they could be impacted by a storm. I don't know if any of you know the markets out in Chelsea and Everett, but they're on the water. They're in sort of the 100-year floodplain, but they're also in this massive storm surge event floodplain. So they're particularly vulnerable. The city's really focused on this, the city and region, and they're trying to see what they can do to help make this more resilient. Then again, as I started to talk about, the Greater Boston Food Bank is super important for the emergency food supply. And they're located out in Newmarket. And they just have all sorts of transportation issues. The blizzard really backed them up, created huge supply disruptions for them. And finally, sort of this really interesting caveat research finding that we found is how do you mix local food, which is totally great, and this urban agriculture movement with climate resilience, disaster risk resilience. Because if you think it through, you sort of think about if we do this push towards local food and a disaster strikes, we wiped out our local food and our distribution system. So that could potentially create huge supply chain disruptions. And then finally, just our recommendations for the city. We really need a public-private food system coordination. This investment in critical food system infrastructure, both roads, but also those Chelsea and Everett distribution centers, really crucial. And then bringing this idea into incorporating resilience into both the city and region's efforts to expand local food production, processing, and distribution is really critical. And sort of that last bullet is we need to figure out what that optimal mix is, because there are a lot of great benefits to local food, but there are a lot of resilience implications if you localize the food system. And sort of this middle bullet of the food items we looked at, milk seemed to be most vulnerable because it's mostly located within the region, so it's potentially most vulnerable to supply chain disruption. And that's sort of it. In case you want to learn more, you can either see me, contact me, or it's on our website, which we just updated this week, and it looks beautiful. So go check out our website and the reports on our website.
So we've got time for 2 questions for Austin, and then we have a panel at the end with everyone. So if you don't think for a question, you can see it a little bit later or you can write it down. All right.
Hi, how are you? This is super interesting to me. So I studied urban planning and then my state was focused on agricultural stuff. Now I'm in New York City and they're doing agencies doing study there. And they seem super interested in static data, like data, not even how anything interacts. Just we want an access database of what's where. Yeah. And I'm curious, is there any pressure, are there any tools that provide a good view of how the network works and how, real-time data, et cetera, all the stuff that's like coming in the pipeline understanding, but cities seem sort of behind in actually using, which is more helpful than a static action.
No, that's a great question. I would think yes, with the caveat that it's all private sector and they're never going to let us know that information. And that's really what the city of New York's realized, is that we don't know it, we don't have access to it. And that's why I think there's having that big push to at minimum get a static map, and then you sort of understand at the base layer what the problems are, and then you can sort of work towards that. And sort of what came out of the Boston study is you need that collaboration of public-private. And I think that's what both Boston needs, and I think what most cities, including New York, would need.
We've got time for one more.
Yes. Did you study how disruptions to everywhere except for New England and Boston would affect Boston's food distribution? Like if say the entire country had a drought except for New England, how would Boston?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did not, mostly just sort of the constraints of the project. It was a year-long project. We did, part of it was building out a framework to assess food system resilience, which was a big chunk. But that's sort of the big other question that we don't have an answer to. I don't think anyone has an answer to, especially like when we were doing this, the California droughts were a big issue. And I don't think anyone sort of figured out what that disruption would mean, especially in these big centers of agriculture like California, Midwest, sort of out of Europe. I think that's the next sort of phase of research that needs to be done.
Can I ask?
Oh, I don't know.
Thanks, Austin. So we're gonna transition now to Liz from Grove, who will also be giving a presentation, and we'll have a short Q&A again. And so yeah, but we should all thank Austin for a great presentation.
Thank you. That was fascinating. was awesome. I like to think that I'm prepared for a zombie apocalypse, or try to think about how prepared I am. Hopefully at the end of this talk, you guys all are interested in growing a little bit of your own food based on Austin's findings here. So my name is Liz. I'm an experienced designer at Grove. We're a startup in Somerville building connected devices that grow food in your home. Can I ask who's heard of Grove before? Has anyone heard of Grove? Nice. And is anyone here a gardener or grows a little bit of food? Yeah? Nice. Okay, cool. Sweet. So I'm going to tell you a bit about our product and a bit, so you can just kind of build on what Austin is saying in some ways, but talking about, I mean, it sounds like a lot of research even is indicative of the fact that people don't think enough about food systems, or the way that a lot of things that we do impact agriculture and more importantly vice versa, especially in terms of our national environment. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. I mean, to build on what Austin was saying, at Grove, we've been around for about 2 years now. We're founded by two MIT founders who started building systems in their dorm room and realized in their personal research that our food systems are broken in the way that they're feeding us right now. So agriculture, for example, uses 70% of our water and is the nation's leading cause of impaired water quality. We're talking about industrial farming that is primarily not local and is primarily designed to do one thing really well and ship it to you. We're talking about processed and packaged foods. Americans discard a ton of food packaging every day. It's like single-use packaging that gets you your food, you then toss it. This one always really gets me. Related to this study, the average head of lettuce travels 1,500 miles to get to you. And what sucks about that is that this lettuce is losing nutritional value every day that it's not in your stomach, between harvest and getting to your plate. With that in mind, the way that food is sold right now, the way that food is grown, when we talk about GMOs, things are, shelf life is prioritized at the cost of nutrition. I feel personally like we're too focused on getting enough calories or not too many calories. We should be talking about nutrients and the nutrient value of our food. Finally, this food gets to your house, except that 40% of it is thrown out, which is a huge mark. Talk about food security. Most of, not most, 40% of the food that we grow doesn't actually get eaten. At Grove, we are building on the idea that we're disconnected from our food. That's geographically, emotionally, economically. We're not only disconnected from our food, but the natural systems that grow our food. And we're really determined to fix that. So an anecdote that I love to talk about is and I know that this was true for me when I first joined Grove a couple years ago. When I walk into a grocery store, like how many things could I actually look around and picture before they were harvested as a seed? Also, if you're like touching a seed, like seeds all look strange, very different. There's a huge variety. Brussels sprouts were the big one. I realized I had no idea what a Brussels sprout looked like before it was harvested. This is a field of Brussels sprouts, not what I would have expected. And this is what Brussels sprouts look like on the vine or whatever the stem is. That is not what I pictured when I pictured a Brussels sprout plant. What is that? And I feel like that's a huge disconnection that I just get Brussels sprouts and I'm like, cool, thank you for giving me a bag of Brussels sprouts. I have no idea what Brussels sprouts look like when they're grown. Literally no idea. So at Grove, we're thinking about how do we get closer to food and closer to nature, but with an important caveat that over half the world, as of 2008, lives in cities, and that number is growing fast. It's not going to go down anytime soon. So we're in these huge metropolises. How, in that context, do we get closer to food and nature in an increasingly urban world? They're intricately connected. So this is the Grove ecosystem. So we're building a connected device that is, in some ways, a self-sustaining ecosystem. It's growing fresh greens, herbs. You can grow some small fruiting plants, peppers, tomatoes. We try to create a sort of a 360 experience that's making it simple and accessible and beautiful in your home to grow what you eat. It's a lifestyle device at the end of the day. So there's a sunrise and sunset feature. This light goes up and down. You set your sunrise in the morning. The grove starts a warmer light, builds up throughout the day. And I'll tell you why the aquarium exists. So this process is called aquaponics. So you feed the fish. The fish waste is then converted by beneficial bacteria into plant fertilizer. Pumps carry the water up into the garden bed, where the plants take up the nutrients, filtering them out of the water. The water is then filtered back into the aquarium. So you get a lower maintenance aquarium and a garden bed that's powered by natural processes, which we're really, really big on. Going way too fast. So last year we started the early adopter program, and we had around 50 people in the Boston area using this thing on the left, which was our early adopter growth. We've learned a ton from them. It's been awesome. We've sort of worked with them the last year to improve and iterate on the product, which is what you see here on the right, the growth ecosystem, which we kickstarted in November and are shipping in the next few months. We got a larger aquarium, an adjustable light to save energy when you're growing seedlings. You can move the light down closer to the plants. A seedling tray here beneath the grow bed is sort of designed to help people or train people to constantly be planting seeds and rotating them up. If you think of a farmer who's like rotating their crops, you want to constantly be preparing to harvest and make room for your new seeds. The aquarium's awesome. There's a whole variety of fish that you can keep in there, and we found kids especially love that. So in the last year, we've had thousands of harvests, lots of leafy greens, fresh herbs, over 75 crops grown. So strawberries, peppers. People are trying all sorts of new things, including some root crops. So this is Craig. He's at Involution Studios in Arlington. They're an awesome agency. We have a couple offices using groves now, which is a really interesting use case for us. And I love this quote that people are usually brought together in the eating of food. I love that this brings us together in the growing too. We'll have cocktail nights where they use the mint and things like that for cocktails. And they've learned a lot in the process. This is Jessica. She's awesome. She's a mother of 4, and she's one of many young families who've purchased the Grove ecosystem to essentially teach their families or teach their kids where food comes from, to use it as a tool in their family to bring the kids together more so than they've succeeded in doing so around their gardens. We've found a few times the kids are really animated about the fish tank, and curious about how it works, which is really cool to see. So there's a reason we're so obsessed with the idea of aquaponics. Hydroponics is another growing method where you're essentially pouring nutrients into the water for the plants to take up. What we love is that in aquaponics, fish, bacteria, and plants are sort of working together to provide food, right? And this is an ecological cycle that learning from it and watching it happen and understanding these invisible magical bacteria that are transferring fish waste into your food, it gives people a deeper empathy or appreciation, or it makes it a much more interactive experience than other growing methods. It also actually over time is a lot more maintenance than hydroponics, which requires a person to interact. And it's something we want to move towards as an organization. And I mean, our ambition ultimately is to move people towards not just sustainability, but systems that are where the outputs are actually higher than the inputs in the end. So as experience designer, I work on GrowOS, which is our mobile app. The hardware is connected to your app over Wi-Fi. And I see it as a window into the ecological systems that power the ecosystem. At the end of the day, there's a lot of invisible magic happening in the water and bacteria. I'm really excited about our app as a way to sort of bring to light, educate, train people about how their plants are growing.
And what's cool about that is that in some ways those same systems are happening at a much bigger scale on the planet. So Grove OS is sort of designed to give everyone a green thumb. We have a marketplace, we have the app, all of our services are sort of designed to make the ecosystem accessible to people who don't garden, who have killed every houseplant they've ever owned, like if someone's me. To make it like fun and exciting and a lot less daunting to grow your own food, which I think is critical. And we're doing it indoors. So this is a residential controlled environment agriculture, where you have lights that are replacing the sun, so your grove doesn't need to be near a window. You're controlling the flow of water through your grove from your phone. You're controlling fans that are serving as that sort of a breeze over your plants to strengthen the stems. You're controlling all of that from your phone. I see Grove OS as sort of a curriculum. It's your teacher in a lot of ways. So you have messages come to you that with lesson plans that tell you about things like rotating crops or pruning your greens or how to pollinate your tomatoes. And it's also your portal to all that learning, and then tools, whether that's through our marketplace, whether that's tracking your bok choy with notes on how to harvest it properly or when to harvest it. That's all stuff that the app can do. We really feel like food is personal. There's a lot of reasons why it's really powerful to grow a little bit of what you eat. So we know this is one part of a bigger solution. People are not going to go back to growing everything they consume. But growing a little bit of what you consume is, we've already seen, a really powerful way to be more connected and empathetic about the environment that's creating your food, but also understanding where your food is coming from and worrying about it, right? I mean, it's something maybe we can see is not front of mind for most people. I now feel comfortable, keeping a plant alive that might feed me. Like that's huge. We're also putting these in schools, which has been really, really cool to see. We have been 4 schools so far. We're putting them in a 5th school in the Bronx tomorrow. Science teachers have approached us to get ecosystems as a learning tool for everything from, biology to understanding to agriculture to understanding even the mechanical systems that operate the grove. So that's been really cool to watch. We hope eventually that everyone will have a device or some way of growing a little food in their own home. So it's really exciting even for us to see companies like IKEA actually just released a tabletop hydroponic system. So you're growing a couple heads of lettuce or some herbs on your kitchen counter, for example. And we hope to release future products that make it, whether they're smaller or bigger, that make it accessible for everybody to grow some of what they eat. And we envision lots of things that can happen in your kitchen or your living room. So yeah, we're Grove, and hopefully you guys will aim to grow a little bit of what you eat. Thanks.
Questions for Liz, and then there's a panel at the end, so don't worry, get out all of the questions.
So I actually did my thesis on aquaponics at MIT. It's awesome.
And yeah, we won the ideas competition for an aquaponics project that we put in Lenya, Kenya. And my thesis was on the profitability or lack thereof of large-scale aquaponics systems.
Profitability?
The non-profitability,
Yeah.
really. Yeah, it was something to be profitable within. So this is really interesting because, you can't, the business I studied actually went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So this is cool because it seems like you figured it out on a super small scale.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your monetization scheme. What do you charge people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not trying to profit off the production of food,
Exactly.
right? is coming out of them. So we charge for the ecosystem. It's an expensive product at the moment, right? In terms of our small scale manufacturing, which we do locally, so we charge $4,500 for the ecosystem. That's just the hardware. It comes with all of the tools that you need. It comes with the mobile app and 24-hour support. We do then charge for, or we have a marketplace with all of the tools that you'll need for recurring care of the ecosystem. So that means seeds, fish food, iron, kelp, micronutrient mix, things like that. So what I'm also really excited about is in the future, as part of our business model, offering GrowOS to non-hardware owners. So whether it's a paid app or we're talking about proving that we can monetize the app through the marketplace as a free download.
Not a subscription.
We've thought a lot about a subscription model, especially for the hardware customers. But yeah, not currently. I mean, in general, we found people's needs change over time. Yeah, we've thought about a subscription model. If we were going to offer GrowOS as a free app in the App Store, we would not probably do a subscription model, but we would see how quickly or whether people monetize in the marketplace, tapping into the marketplace through GrowOS, which I'd be excited to do just because that means, I think a lot of what we've done in the app could be accessible to even an outdoor gardener, or beneficial to an outdoor gardener even, which means we can reach a lot more people.
Is the app connected to the individual system, or is it more of a general wiki on how to?
It's connected to the ecosystem, so but the information's you don't need to have your ecosystem connected via Wi-Fi to benefit from the knowledge base. But over Wi-Fi, you're controlling the lights, the fans, things like that. Thanks.
Do you have data on how many hours a week people use it are spending into their garden?
Yeah, it varies, and our data is pretty anecdotal. We've been in really close touch with the beta testers, so it's a small sample size, but based on what we've seen from them, it varies from, 30 minutes maybe average, a week that they are spending on maintenance, and then other than that, there's no good way to test it. They're opening the app a couple times a week, and anecdotally, what a lot of people say is they'll come downstairs in the morning and just stick their head in the garden, check it out, make sure everything's good. Okay, that's great. And then harvesting, a couple of times a week, right? So that's the actual the work involved in caring for it's really front loaded. It's a higher maintenance in the first month than ever afterwards. But yeah, around 30 minutes is maybe an average in terms of maintenance. Is that, sorry? Yeah. More? Sorry.
You said that a couple times that you'd like everyone to grow a little bit of the food, just for a sense of scale, and however is appropriate to measure it. For maybe a family of 4, how much food does growth contribute to their table?
Yeah, so we always say it varies a lot based on what you're growing, because if you're growing exclusively lettuces and leafy greens, and you're rotating them regularly, a lot of our customers are growing a couple salads. So for example, I think 4, they want to grow, and then just salads at night if they're really crushing it, right? But that's, which is awesome. So yeah, if you're doing herbs, you can provide all of your herbs. If you're talking about picking some for meals that are, a couple times a week. So yeah, it's hard to answer, but a good amount of food is certainly not our goal. We know our goal is not to replace your grocery bill at all. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Now I'm going to pass the mic over to Jackson. He's going to present about fresh food generation. We'll have time for 1 to 2 questions, then we're going to take a break. We're going to mix mingle, and then we'll queue up for the count.
Hey everyone, my name is Jackson. Before I begin, I would ask that y'all stretch, do whatever you need to do, stay awake. It's late, you all work hard today. Okay, cool. So I'm the co-founder of Fresh Food Generation. We're a food truck and catering business that provides healthy, affordable, prepared foods that is locally sourced to neighborhoods of Boston that are typically neglected, low income, or underserved. However you want to describe it is fine by me. So I'll just hop right in. These are the founders. Cassandra Campbell is my business partner. She and I met, and that's me doing a catering drop for 300 people and flexing. So we met at the Food Project maybe 8 or 9 years ago now, which is a nonprofit youth development organization for sustainable agriculture, which is where we really learned a lot about food systems, food access, food equity, food justice. We went off on our separate ways. She went on to MIT, I went to UVM, studied agriculture, and then she approached me with the idea to start this food truck. And I said, sure, how hard could it be? And 4 years later, here we are. So this is what drives us. In particular, the first one applies to me. One cannot think well, love well, sleep well if one has not dined well. So what you eat sort of dictates how you live, is how I feel. And this can apply to your work, your play, what you do for fun, sort of the culture you live in. And it's an old idea, right? It's Virginia Woolf. This is not new stuff. Deserts are naturally occurring topographical and ecological phenomenon. Food deserts, food swamps, and food oases are human-made phenomenons. So as a company, we try to stay away from food deserts only because they do not naturally exist in nature. We believe that food has the potential to be plentiful everywhere, but due to economic redlining and other sort of policy issues that have come up in the past, food deserts now exist. Keep in mind, a little over 100 years ago, 85% of the population was growing their own food on small family farms. And we've just in the last 100 years moved to cities, where now half the population is living in cities. So our food system has changed dramatically and rapidly, and we haven't really had time to adjust back to a system that is more equitable for everybody. And finally, create the world we want to live in. So Cassandra and I met up, discussed the idea. She was like, I live in Roxbury. There's a Y, and then across the street, there's a Popeye's chicken. So if I want to go to the gym and work out, and then get something healthy to eat, I have to hop in my car, go to JP, get something healthier to eat, and I'm fortunate enough to have carbs. So that's sort of where the idea came from. And so we're going to skip over all the research and fundraising and all that stuff we did, and maybe come back to it a little bit later. But this was the business model. This is probably about as techy as I can get in terms of tech stuff. But the business model was to use a food truck to access these neighborhoods. Dudley Square 3 days a week, the downtown market 2 days a week, and food truck events. And then we do a good amount of catering, both for community events, corporate, and then private events as well. So we decided to split the neighborhood market and the downtown market with the food truck, mostly because we felt the truck needed to be self-sustaining to be successful. We are a for-profit business, we're not a nonprofit, which makes us unique in this space with such a strong mission. And so we'd be in Dudley, we served ICIC lunch 3 days a week. And then we would hit the downtown market. The middle picture is at Boston Medical Center, and then we're also at City Hall. And our goal was to go out and be consistent. Go out every day, rain or shine, be there, be consistent. And that taught us a lot about our business. And this was just, 5 months in the summer. So milestones and successes, we did 2,000 meals per month, which is a substantial amount of food if you consider half a pound of food being a meal. We were able to hire 3 full-time employees and 5 part-time positions, and we supported local the local economy and local farmers with $45,000 in revenue for their farms and their operations. And so this is, I want to give a shout out to our team because a lot of the time when I come to these meetings, these panels and these discussions, people are like, oh, Jackson, what you're doing is so great. And really it's not anything to do with me. It's a lot of the people around us and within our team that make this possible. So this was at the Food Project Farm in Lincoln for a community lunch they were doing with funders and community members and teams in the program. We had Lee Sean on the left. He was our truck manager to drive the truck, take it out. Cedric White, our chef, and he's also an urban farmer. And then TC or Tricilia was our kitchen manager. These guys really drove a lot of what we did in terms of creating new systems, train staff, standardized recipes, building an inventory system, like all the sort of nitty-gritty business stuff that you have to do as a food business. It was a lot of what these guys did. This was a really fun day for us because we talked a lot about the food project, we talked a lot about food development, we talked a lot about sort of food access issues and where it comes from, but they all live in Dorchester or Mattapan or Roxbury. And so until they went out to Lincoln, which is only 5 miles away, it's not far, they didn't really get what we were talking about in terms of growing local food, growing sustainable food. So it was some cross-cultural learning and also some cross, sort of emphasizing our mission for the people who work with us as well. Okay, so this was really cool for us. We didn't do any marketing other than, sorry for the slides, other than we got some media coverage and then neighborhood organizations recognized the work that we were doing, which led to us doing a ton of neighborhood community events, which then sort of re-emphasized the whole cycle. I don't really need to read the slides to you guys, but essentially we were able to be successful because we put in a lot of legwork within the community first before we even launched the truck. And so these are just some photos from events we've done with the truck, some without the truck. The bottom left for you guys is an event we did in Dorchester at night. It was to open the Fairmount train line. There were 200 people there, there's a stage, there's a concert, and this is really what we try to emphasize and are all about it. Getting people all together, everyone's eating good food. I mean, it's not complicated. How do you get local food to local people, right? And it's surprisingly challenging. Again, on the bottom as well is within the Food Project Greenhouse in Roxbury. Top right is at the Roxbury YMCA, and this is all going to tie into what I'm getting into next. And then top left is an event, a private event we did in JP for the Boston Impact Initiative. So I'm just going to talk about some lessons learned. Running the truck 5 days a week is really exhausting, especially when you do weekend events and your team is 3 full-time people. So we decided to use our truck in a smarter way to both create impact for the most number of people while being financially sustainable. We're going to open for Fridays only. Otherwise, we're going to do events with the truck because we can reach the most number of people possible in the shortest amount of time. Also, the Dudley location is fine, but it's highly residential. So that means if you're at work for lunch, you're not at home looking for a food truck. Even if you are at home, you're probably still not looking for a food truck because food trucks in the neighborhoods in particular are a very new phenomenon. They come up with a truck and they say, you got any burgers or hot dogs? And that's all they, Our food is Caribbean and Latin American. So we're like, no, yeah, but not as much. I don't know. So if you haven't tried our food, I highly recommend it. I'm sort of required to say that, but it is tasty. And so this is really exciting. This is what's happening next in the evolution of fresh food generation. Dot House Health Center is in Dorchester on Dot Ave, right by Fields Corner along the Red Line. Lots of food options. All Vietnamese, unless you like Domino's. all sit-down restaurants. There's no really quick grab-and-go options, which is what our niche is. I would say we're sort of a farmer's market meets your fast food restaurant, in the sense that we prepared the food for you, so if you don't have time or the knowledge, we're your guys. But if you don't want to have a whole experience sit-down thing and you just want something familiar, we're also the people. And so this is a mock-up drawing of the space, and we opened it yesterday. So I'm a little tired, but so just bear with me, ask all the questions you want. I'm sorry I'm not doing a better job, but anyway, self-service coffee. The previous vendor here, they took 15 minutes to make food. It wasn't a very welcoming experience. What's interesting about this is the Dockhouse Health Center has 300 staff and nurses and doctors come through there every day. They also have their patients come through there. And so in this way, we found sort of a designated area where there are lots of people already who are still probably looking for some of that food access stuff that we offer. That's healthy food, that's recognizable, that's affordable, without having to leave the comfort of their office. The other thing that's nice is if you've ever been to a food truck, it's probably been sunny out. Most people don't go to food trucks in the rain or when it's cold or when it's snowing. So this also provides us a chance to meet our customer where they're at without having to worry about the weather. Our hope is that we can create a model that works with health centers to provide a healthful meal for their patients in other areas of Boston, but we have to see how it goes first. Strengthening our sourcing ties. The food project has set aside an acre of land to grow specifically for fresh food generation. We sent them a list of the ingredients we would want to purchase and a sort of a price point we could manage, and they said, no problem, we'll deliver to you every Thursday. Great. The biggest challenge for us has been getting farmers to deliver to us. A lot of the times we have to go out to the farmer. And then building new connections, working with Vermont Chevron. They take goats who would normally just be sort of discarded and turn it into meat production. Curry goat is a popular dish in Caribbean cultures. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. And then looking ahead, we're building a strong foundation. And I want to talk a little bit about how you build a hyper-local model, right? This model is not designed to be a national model, but try and figure out how you take this hyper-local model and make it successful other places. And then finally, just talk a little bit about why we've had success in the city of Boston already. So our team now has changed completely, but Ashley is our kitchen manager and social media guru. She's taking a picture of a sweet potato the size of her head. Edward's our truck manager and maintenance guy. Also an extremely talented cook, chef, and sort of jack of all trades. And then Jamal is actually Edward's son, but is our catering and cafe manager. So I know this is about tech, but the key piece to our success has been the people around it. And then I can get into the logistics and the nitty-gritty of sort of the success of a food truck and the uniqueness of a food truck. It's mobile. You don't have to worry about being in one place all the time. Apps on smartphones to accept payments have been huge for a lot of small businesses. Also in terms of dealing with payroll, entering in hours, ordering food, checking email, all that stuff. So I would say the mobile tech movement has been the biggest impact so far. Very quickly, this is a graph of obesity and diabetes in the city of Boston, designated by neighborhood, specifically focusing on Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan right now. We found this data from 2010, so it's a little bit dated, but this is what sort of spurred us on to continue with this project. What we found was that Mattapan in adults has a 34% obesity rate, while Fenway has a 7% obesity rate. I know it's hard to see, I apologize. And that's strictly, I believe, a food access issue. And so by using a truck to access these neighborhoods in a way that's impactful and in a way that's able to reach the most number of people possible. We're able to help curb that health-related, diet-related health issues. Sorry. Similarly, diabetes, 2 to 3 times higher likelihood that you'll be hospitalized for diabetes than you would in other neighborhoods of Boston if you live in Roxbury, Dorchester, and American. Again, this is old data, but still profoundly significant in the work that we do. So how does this relate to the nation? This is just a map I found on Google of obesity rates in the United States. So you can kind of ask where you want to target first. Seeing as how Massachusetts has one of the lower rates of obesity, you can basically go anywhere and do this model. Anywhere, but what you need is the people on the ground doing the work, reaching out and figuring out who your partners are going to be, which leads me to the next point, which is the work that we do would not be possible without a lot of these groups. Boston Impact Initiative gave us our first loan. Epicenter Community, previously Future Boston Alliance, was the first accelerator we ever did, and have been longtime supporters of the work we do. I highly recommend you look at the work they're doing now. Their whole goal is to make Boston a hipper, cooler, more fun city for young people. They're the ones who got the team primarily to run until 2 instead of midnight.